Hello everybody, I'm Skip Alzheimer. Welcome to the AV Geeks lunchtime streaming show where we are outside taking advantage of the nice weather, although there is pollen in the air and it is eventually going to make my eyes all irritated and is going to be a problem, but you know, that's what antihistamines are for. But yeah. Anyways, that film strip was nuts. Man, taken out of context, there's so many fascinating visuals there. So very much a fan of that. All right, so one last film in the Zoo Animals in the Wild series, brought to us by the fine folks at Cornet Films and Jack Hanna from the Columbus Zoo. Here's Bears. Enjoy.
Bears. Bears are about the biggest and strongest of all the land animals there are. Most bears live in North America and northeastern Asia. There are a great many different kinds of bears. Bears don't see or hear very well, but they have a very good sense of smell. Bears eat just about anything. They love roots, berries, nuts, and grass and twigs. They also eat insects, and other animals too. They're not usually very good at hunting. This rabbit was probably caught by another animal, and the bear just took it. This coyote won't try to take the rabbit from the bear. The coyote will just wait until the bear's finished eating and see if the bear has left any meat behind. Bears seem to enjoy being in water. It isn't just the grown-up bears who like water. The little cubs do too. These bear cubs are a few months old. They barely weighed 1 pound when they were born, less than half a kilogram. These cubs are twins. Twins aren't unusual among bears. Bears are playful, but their strength makes them very dangerous. Bears are good tree climbers. Bears are curious animals. The skunk is frightened. Lifting its tail like that is a warning. The skunk can spray a bad-smelling liquid. It can, but will it? Yes. It will take more than one bath to wash off the skunk's smelly spray. But a bear will be curious. Uh-oh, now a porcupine. Those quills are sharp and come off easily. A curious bear. And if the bear gets its nose too close to those sharp quills, it did. Bears usually live alone. Sometimes one bear will try to live where another one is already living. Then the two bears will fight. The bear that loses the fight will have to find a different place to live. But wherever it lives, the bear will live alone, hunting its food and defending its territory. Bears.
Did she say coyote instead of coyote? I don't know. Maybe that was just, I misheard that. But I don't know. Maybe we'll run across some more of this series. We did a big batch. They were all kind of grouped together in a box. So maybe, I don't know, maybe there's some more out there in the world. But there we go. It was a nice run. Here's another one that it's a series that we've been doing. It's a bunch of Red Cross for lifeguarding. This is called Survival Swimming. Enjoy.
Looks like trouble. With all that heavy clothing and hip boots on, he's going straight to the bottom. For good, right? Wrong. He's learned how to survive in emergencies like this. By not panicking and by taking advantage of the air trapped in his boots and clothing, he can comfortably stay afloat for a long time. Most people can float. To see how buoyant you are, try this simple test. Take a breath and pull your knees up. If your back comes to the surface like this, you can float. Even people with minimum buoyancy can float in a vertical position, like this. By taking a deeper breath and slowly extending the arms and tilting the head back, many people can float in a horizontal position. The non-buoyant swimmer can stay afloat by resting on his back and using easy movements of the arms and legs. Sometimes it's necessary for swimmers to keep their heads above water in order to signal for help or avoid danger. In these situations, treading is a useful survival skill. There are 3 leg kicks commonly used: the rotary kick, the scissors kick, and the breaststroke kick. When using any of these kicks, the arms maintain a downward sculling motion. When it is necessary to stay afloat for long periods of time with minimum effort, the survival floating technique is recommended. A slow rhythm is established, pressing the arms downward while exhaling and bringing the head above the surface just long enough to inhale. Between breaths, the swimmer assumes a completely relaxed position. A modification of the survival floating technique for non-buoyant swimmers is this travel stroke. Slow and easy forward progress counteracts the swimmer's lack of buoyancy. When it's necessary to swim fully clothed, strokes that employ an underwater arm recovery should be used. The side stroke is a good choice. So is the breaststroke. And so is the elementary backstroke. Using these strokes makes it unnecessary to lift water-soaked clothing out of the water, and so reduces tiring. The ability to quickly submerge and swim fully clothed underwater can often be useful in emergencies. A modified breaststroke is efficient, and so is a modified stroke on the side. Clothing that is closely woven will hold air and provide support when it is wet. To inflate the shirt, be sure the top button is fastened. Air can then be blown in between the second and third buttons, or it can be splashed in. The shirt tails should be secured to prevent air from escaping. The trapped air bubble now helps support the swimmers. Trousers provide even more flotation when they're used properly. First, remove the shoes. Then, from a face-down floating position, slip one trouser leg off at a time. The ends of the trouser legs must then be tied, either separately or together. Inflation is accomplished either by splashing air into the open end or by flinging them over the shoulder. The waistband is kept secured and underwater to prevent the trapped air from escaping. Our hunter is using combinations of all these survival techniques to stay afloat. And as you can see, the added weight of his clothing and gear does not make him sink. The fact is, clothing is actually helping him. By splashing air into his jacket, he's forming an air bubble that'll help keep him afloat. And in cold water, clothing provides extra warmth for the body, delaying substantially the effects of exposure. When you find yourself unexpectedly in the water, follow these steps to survival. Don't panic. Use your clothing to help you stay afloat. And use the survival swimming techniques you've seen here. You'll stay afloat and stay alive.
I would love to have an edit of this film where there's no narration. It's just people floating, and even take out the text with just that music in the background. It was so relaxing. You know, there was no panic. Like, you know, survival swimming is relaxing. Yeah, it was really great. Okay, this film is fascinating. I feel like this was made maybe in the late 40s, early 50s. It's called The Color of Man, and it explains pigmentation. And it's pretty great. So, enjoy.
Modern forms of transportation permit travel to any part of the Earth's surface. But this has not always been true. For most of human history, our movement was confined to small areas, natural barriers. During those thousands of generations, many differences developed. In this film, we are dealing with differences in color. The color of our skin is due to the presence of small particles of a chemical called melanin. Because the amount is different in each of us, our skins appear to have different colors. The ability to produce melanin is hereditary. Compared to other hereditary differences, it involves only a few gene pairs. Because of this, people with different color skins may be more alike genetically than those whose color is the same. The production of melanin is stimulated by the ultraviolet radiation that reaches us from the sun. A short exposure to these rays will bring out hereditary differences previously hidden. The melanin particles protect us by absorbing the ultraviolet rays before they can injure the sensitive underlayers of the skin. Those who lack the hereditary ability to produce enough melanin may be painfully burned. As the Earth curves away from the poles, the same amount of sunlight is spread over a smaller and smaller area. This increases the ultraviolet intensity as we get closer to the equator. Many of our ancestors lived in these areas where the radiation is very intense all year round. Those who couldn't produce enough melanin suffered from sunburn and skin disease. wild game was the main source of food. The intense sunlight made hunting difficult for those with light skin and eyes. The absence of melanin particles allowed the sunlight to leak through the iris and reflect off the retina inside the eye. Dark-eyed people could see more clearly because the melanin in their eyes stopped most of the glare. These and other factors gave people with dark skin and eyes a better chance to stay healthy and have more children. After more than 100,000 years, the only people who survived in these areas had very dark skins. In the rainforests of the north, there was very little ultraviolet for most of the year. The tall trees and thick clouds stopped so much of the sunlight that not even a thin melanin layer was necessary for protection. Vitamin D is produced by the action of ultraviolet rays on certain chemicals in the skin. People who don't get enough of this important vitamin suffer from rickets and other diseases. In the equatorial areas, there was so much ultraviolet that enough got through even the darkest skin to produce the vitamin D that is needed. But in the northern rainforests, there was so little ultraviolet that only very light-skinned people could get enough vitamin D to stay healthy. Thousands of generations have passed. The descendants of these forest peoples are still very light-skinned. Even today, in many of those areas with the strongest ultraviolet, we still find the darkest peoples. There are exceptions. Eskimos and American Indians have different color skins than their areas seem to call for. But their arrival in the Western Hemisphere dates back only to the end of the last ice age. This period of 20,000 years is too short to have produced a change. These examples were caused by extreme conditions. Between them, there are infinite degrees of shading. Today, protective clothing has weakened the selective power of the environment, even in the most extreme climates. We no longer need to adjust to different amounts of ultraviolet through hereditary traits. As science brings us closer together, an understanding of these small differences can allow us to realize more fully our basic similarities. Variations in color demonstrate man's ability to adapt to the forces of nature, an adaptability which has enabled us to emerge victorious in the struggle for survival.
What a weird montage at the end. Everybody watching a plane take off. Is that symbolic of us emerging victorious in the game of survival? I don't know. But what I do know is there is such a thing called reaction kinetics, and here's an introduction to it. Enjoy.
The control of chemical reactions is a subject of both scientific interest and great practical importance. Some of the factors involving the control of chemical reactions are illustrated in a relatively simple reaction, that of H2 plus Cl2 giving 2HCl. This reaction can occur at varying rates. If hydrogen and chlorine are mixed together at room temperature in the dark, there is no apparent reaction. If the mixture is heated, the reaction takes place more readily, and if it is ignited by a spark, the mixture explodes. Let's now observe the steps in this reaction, beginning with the molecules of the cold chlorine gas moving in slow motion. We see that the molecules rebound upon collision, being repelled as their electron clouds begin to merge. As temperature is raised, however, their speeds increase, and the more energetic collisions may break molecules into free atoms. Also, since chlorine is a colored gas, it can absorb visible light of relatively low energy, and a single low-energy photon, thus absorbed, may break a chlorine molecule into two free atoms. Now, if hydrogen is present, collisions may occur between these free chlorine atoms and hydrogen molecules to form structures called activated complexes, which have an extremely brief span of life. This activated complex can separate into a free atom of hydrogen and a molecule of hydrogen chloride. The hydrogen atoms thus produced can then strike other chlorine molecules to produce hydrogen chloride and free chlorine atoms. At increased camera speed, we observe that the reaction proceeds in this chain fashion, producing more and more hydrogen chloride molecules, leaving fewer hydrogen and chlorine molecules. In addition to these chain propagating reactions, there is also a chain breaking reaction. This occurs when two free chlorine atoms strike a third body, which absorbs their excess energy and allows them to combine to form a chlorine molecule. It is the energy of collision that differentiates those which initiate reactions from those which result merely in rebound. By means of this graph, we illustrate the energy involved. The vertical axis represents the potential energy. The horizontal axis, called the reaction coordinate, indicates the relative positions of the molecules or atoms during a reaction. This point indicates the relative energy positions of the reactants. Now, using still slower motion, let us look at a reaction between a hydrogen atom and a chlorine molecule. As the reactants approach each other, the point moves to the right, and we see that their relative velocity begins to decrease as the kinetic energy is changed into potential energy. Stopping our action, we observe that the reactants had sufficient energy for the system to reach a kind of changeover point, the activated complex. Here, the atom and molecule are at the point of highest potential energy. In most respects, this activated complex is like any ordinary molecule, except that it is in the process of coming apart. It has definite bond lengths, angles, and vibrational frequencies. Once the system has passed this point, no additional energy is needed, and the reaction is quite certain to be completed. Let us observe this reaction again without interruption. Now, on the other hand, if the reactants do not have sufficient energy, they collide but do not react, and the system reverts to its former state. The potential energy barrier for each type of reaction is different. For the reaction between a hydrogen atom and a chlorine molecule, we have seen that this is the general shape of the barrier, while for the reaction between a hydrogen molecule and a chlorine atom, this is the general shape. In nature, relatively few reactions take place between atoms and molecules. Most collisions take place only between molecules. The reaction between hydrogen and iodine is a simple example of such a reaction. Most of these molecules do not have enough energy to react, but if they do, they first combine like this to form the activated complex and then split into two hydrogen iodide molecules. Here is the potential energy curve for the reaction between hydrogen and iodine. Recalling the potential energy curve for the reaction between the hydrogen atom and the chlorine molecule previously seen, we note that the hydrogen-iodine potential curve is much higher. Again, in still slower motion, we see that the reactants must have considerable energy in order to surmount the potential energy barrier and react. Consequently, only a very few collisions, such as this one, result in a reaction. The height of the potential energy barrier depends upon the positions in which the molecules collide. In favorable collisions such as this, the reaction proceeds through a symmetrical activated complex in which this hydrogen-iodine distance is equal to this, and this hydrogen-iodine distance is equal to this. The height of the potential energy barrier is then the lowest possible for this reaction. For less favorable collisions, a higher barrier is encountered. Here the molecules collide at angles such as this. It is not possible to form a symmetrical activated complex, and the molecules are less likely to have sufficient energy to react. A reaction and its reverse may take place at the same time. While hydrogen and iodine molecules are reacting in a forward direction to yield hydrogen iodide, hydrogen iodide molecules react in the reverse direction to yield hydrogen and iodine. The motion of the point from left to right on the potential energy surface represents the forward reaction. Its motion from right to left indicates the reverse reaction. In general, the height of the potential barrier in the forward direction differs from that in the reverse direction. For this reaction between hydrogen and iodine molecules, the height is smaller for the forward reaction, while in other reactions, such as that between a hydrogen molecule and a chlorine atom, the height of the barrier is smaller for the reverse reaction. Now, in the reaction between a hydrogen atom and a chlorine molecule, the height of the barrier is much greater in the reverse reaction. Although the reverse reaction does occur, it requires much more energy, and a considerably greater proportion of the collisions will be ineffective, like this one, as compared with those of the forward reaction. If we begin with a mixture of hydrogen and iodine gas, initially only the forward reaction producing hydrogen iodide occurs, because as yet there is not a sufficient amount of hydrogen iodide present for the reverse reaction to be apparent. However, as more and more hydrogen iodide molecules are formed, the reverse reaction occurs more frequently, until finally the rates of the forward and reverse reactions become equal, and there is no further net change in the amounts of the reactants and products. At this point, equilibrium has been established. Now observe that the heights of the potential energy barrier for both forward and reverse reactions are nearly equal. Hence, the energy required for going in both directions is almost the same, and the amounts of the three reactants at equilibrium are nearly the same. In the hydrogen and chlorine reaction, equilibrium is also reached, but the reaction goes almost completely to hydrogen chloride, and only minute amounts of hydrogen and chlorine remain. The frequency of collisions between pairs of molecules increases with the product of their concentrations. Therefore, reaction rates are strongly influenced by the partial pressures of the molecular species involved. The effective temperature can be appreciated by remembering that collisions are not effective unless they pass that halfway state called the activated complex. Whether atoms and molecules have sufficient energy to react depends on whether they are moving with sufficient relative velocity. It is possible to determine the energy needed for a reaction to take place by studying the effect of temperature on the rates of reactions. When appropriate substances are present and enter into the activated complex, the activation energy required is lowered and the reaction proceeds more rapidly. The finding of such enzymes and catalysts is a major portion of the study of reaction kinetics. The control of concentration, pressure, temperature, and catalysts is fundamental in applying the principles of reaction kinetics to the practical problems of industry.
Yeah, that was another one where I'll take the soundtrack from the survival swimming, cut out the narration, and just listen to that while we're watching this awesome animation of atoms and graphs. I think that's the way to do it. So somebody mentioned creating a playlist of things to fall asleep to. I'm kind of doing that, and I tried this experiment a couple years ago with the assembly line sleep machine, but I think the soundtrack was too jarring for people. So I'm working on a new one, and I'm going to be actually working with a streaming channel called Eternal Family, who is going to host a bunch of these things. And it's a paid site just to try to make some money, because, you know, we have to pay for the renovation costs of the archive, which are still happening and going along. But eventually I will make it available on YouTube. But I think we'll let it be on Eternal Family for a little while before we let that go. But yes, I think some of this footage is fascinating, and I think also it helps you just kind of fall asleep. And this is because I watch a lot of stuff. So I watch stuff from our collection, I watch stuff when we do the show, but I also watch a lot of television and YouTube and movies. So my brain is constantly getting visual information, and I try, before I fall asleep, I try to watch things like food preparation where there's no narration, and also travel stuff where there's no narration and it's first person. And that just kind of lulls me into this sleep state. And so it's been really helpful with anxiousness, and also, you know, instead of looking at social media before you go to bed, I watch this stuff, and it kind of just lulls me into this. It fills my brain with this kind of neutral imagery, and it's pretty great. Although this morning I woke up because I was doing spreadsheet work in my dream, and I was like, well, that's annoying, like doing spreadsheet work, like that's not cool. Anyways, someone was like, where's the little spaceship from the asteroids thing? Well, this is about a flying saucer, so it's not exactly the same. Oh, and also, like, so the Color of Man was, the soundtrack was Gershon Kingsley, of Perry and Kingsley, and it wasn't electronic. It was like early composition stuff that he did. So it makes me want to like do a little bit of research and see what Gershon Kingsley did before he started using synthesizers. All right. Anyways, this is the Discus. Enjoy.
The discus throw requires hard work, yet hard work alone is not enough. Success in the discus throw depends upon the clearest possible understanding of the event's principles. The athlete who understands the discus throw will improve steadily. The athlete who does not becomes increasingly worse as the season goes on. Hence the need for a clear understanding of and a systematic approach to the discus throw. The most important words used in describing the discus throw are twist, torque, and centrifugal force. Suppose we illustrate in this fashion. We can store power in a strip of metal in two ways. First, we can simply bend it. The power is released in a forward or linear direction. Second, we can twist the metal. In this way, we develop torque or twisting power. This twisting concept is the one that the discus thrower should try to fix in his mind. This, then, is our basic concept in throwing the discus. All points of technique stem from the effort to develop the greatest possible twisting force. In an athletic event, centrifugal force is developed by twisting the body from a position of non-alignment through alignment and past alignment. Again, non-alignment, alignment, past alignment. The discus is held by the last joints of the fingers. The fingers are slightly spread. The grip should be comfortable and without tension. With practice, the thrower will find the handhold that suits him best. Let us examine a fine discus thrower as he makes a standing throw. His basic effort is to wind up and unwind, or to twist and untwist. In the unwinding, an effort is made to develop the maximum torque, or twisting effort. Now, let's examine the standing throw in more detail. The athlete has rotated to a wound-up position, a position similar to that of the twisted strip of metal. The feet are comfortably spaced about a yard apart. The body weight is supported over the right foot. The right leg is bent to permit greater power in the unwinding effort. As the thrower unwinds to deliver the discus, he is so committed to a twisting movement that he is compelled to make an additional turn as a follow-through. Our thrower now uses a full turn to make a fine effort of 175 feet. Again, this time in slow motion. As we begin to learn the discus throw, it is important to pause and consider exactly what it is we are trying to accomplish. Remember that the discus throw is a centrifugal force event. The main effort is to develop a twist or torque motion. Recall that in working from a stand, we tried to achieve a wound-up position from which an unwinding could be made with power. This we can call our key position. The purpose of the turn is simply to place the thrower in this key position with momentum. These, then, are the two important words, position and momentum. The test of a good turn becomes clear. Does the turn result in a good position? Is there momentum? Concerning position, is the body weight supported over the right foot? Is the right leg bent to make for a more powerful unwinding effort? As soon as the key position is attained, the thrower untwists with a full circular motion that compels an additional turn. Again, a comfortable position is taken with both feet at the rear of the circle. A preliminary swing establishes rhythm. At the height of this backswing, the legs begin their pivot. A wound-up position is reached. A powerful unwinding delivers the discus. The essential point bears repeating. The turn has been used simply to achieve position with momentum. Now let us concentrate on the footwork. The discus has been called a leg event. This is very true because the turn is made entirely with the legs. It is the correct use of the legs that produces a comfortable key position at the end of the turn. Also, the legs make the important contribution to the powerful unwinding action that delivers the discus. The pivot is begun on both feet. Even though part of the turn has already been made, note that the right foot is still in contact with the ground. The good discus thrower keeps both feet on the ground as long as comfort permits. Note also that the athlete maintains a relatively stable and comfortable position. This scene shows the most critical part of the entire turn. What happens at this point will largely determine success or failure. Even the ability to follow through is being decided at this point. It is now vital that the upper body completely relax and that all the remaining work of the turn be done by the legs. The right leg has pushed off the ground and the pivot is now entirely on the left leg. Two important points deserve our attention. The right leg is being bent and the right knee is being lifted. This action is necessary to permit a landing on a bent right leg. However, the lifting action of the right knee has a tendency to raise the entire body. To counteract this tendency, a special effort is made to sink over a bending left knee. The left leg is kept loose and passive. A good key position is achieved. The preparation for the excellent right leg position was the earlier bending and lifting of the right knee. Notice also the good position of the left leg. It is directly in line with the intended direction of discus flight. The average discus thrower has great trouble with left leg placement. He finds that the left leg is far to the left or over in the bucket. Direct efforts to work on left leg placement are always unsuccessful and upsetting. Oddly enough, the best way to coach left leg placement is to ignore it. If the thrower concentrates on landing on the right leg, and if he is truly trying for a centrifugal effort, the left foot placement will be automatically good. Left foot trouble is a symptom or tip-off that the athlete does not yet understand what he is trying to accomplish. A powerful twisting and lifting effort delivers the discus. Again, we see that the athlete is so committed to a twist that he continues to turn after the discus has been released. We have seen a fine discus thrower illustrate the basic points of technique. It is now important to look at the way a beginner should go about learning these points, to see the procedures and drills that the beginner should use to acquire sound discus form. The beginner should be allowed a brief period of orientation. This permits him to get a feel for the discus. During the first several practice sessions, very few points of form should be taught. As soon as the beginner feels comfortable with his discus, probably in a matter of a few days, he should receive coaching attention. Early coaching centers around the points of comfort over the right leg and a rhythmic twist into a wound-up position. The rotary nature of the event is constantly stressed. The athlete is asked to rotate his body to a wound-up position over the right foot. He should then unwind in a comfortable and relaxed way. A series of such windings and unwindings helps to establish winding, and the discus is released. As the beginner works, he should always keep clearly in mind that the discus is a rotary event and that his task is to develop centrifugal force. The reverse is an important and natural part of the throw and should be taught as soon as possible. The reverse consists of a switching of the feet as the discus is released. This permits a full follow-through and emphasizes the rotary nature of the event. The average beginner is bound to look awkward and stiff. Nevertheless, he should not be burdened with detailed instructions. Instead, he should be encouraged to work in a relaxed and unhurried way, without worrying about distance or direction. Most errors in discus technique spring from a failure to grasp the real nature of the task. Here, for example, is a throw that is only partly centrifugal. Because most errors stem from the inability to understand the torque effort, early coaching must constantly emphasize the roundness of the drive. The beginner is usually very anxious to throw with a full turn, but a sound standing throw must come first. Premature efforts to learn the throw will be fruitless and discouraging. Thus, the beginner must be willing to devote his early sessions to the standing throw. Only when there is some mastery of the standing throw is he ready to work on the turn. Our approach to learning the turn is by way of several drills. The thrower's first task is to become comfortable with the preliminary swings. The same drill in slow motion. Placing both feet at the rear of the circle, he tries to rotate in a loose and relaxed fashion to establish an easy rhythm. The key words are comfort and relaxation. Tension will interfere with an effective turn. The next step is to learn to pivot as far as possible with both feet remaining in contact with the ground. Through as much of the turn as possible, the right foot maintains contact. This increases both balance and power. Only the very finest discus throwers are able to maintain an easy right foot contact with the ground until the last comfortable moment. The beginner has a tendency to lift the right foot immediately. Hence, this type of drill is badly needed. A valuable drill to help the beginner learn balance at the end of the pivot on both feet is to have him prepare to receive a weight at this point. The need to support the weight will focus his attention on a position of comfort and balance. The next drill deals with the most critical part of the turn, that of landing in an effective driving position. Landing must be over the right foot. The upper body must be wound up. In carrying out this drill, the athlete should work smoothly and easily. There should be intense concentration on landing in a balanced position over the right foot. This drill is important enough to be demonstrated again and again. Further progress depends upon its mastery. After a fair degree of proficiency has been achieved, the thrower should be asked to add to the drill. As before, there will be a loose pivot followed by concentration on balance. Now, however, a reverse is added to the exercise. If he can carry out these drills, the athlete has acquired the basic points of sound discus technique. Here in slow motion, our candidate is making a full throw. The actual presence of the discus in his hand tends to bring about some anxiety for performance and tension. Tension is the enemy of good discus throwing. Hence, we always ask the discus thrower to work with a loose, relaxed rhythm. He should try to ignore the discus and think of the drills he's been practicing. An easy pivot on both feet, the right knee leads, a split second of balance, the reverse. As time goes on, more of each practice session will be spent in making full throws. Whenever possible, a skilled observer should be present. The coach will always have in sight the basic principle, to develop centrifugal force through a twisting movement. His corrections will stem from this goal. The athlete who is willing to work, to think, and to cooperate with his coach will progress in the discus throw. And he will find this interesting event a source of satisfaction and achievement.
Iodine, what was it? Iodine and premature instead of premature. Premature. Always learn something new when we're watching these films, and it was interesting to see the golf kind of footage in this film about the Discus, because we just went through the golf swing footage yesterday, and it was dynamic to see it be used again. It was pretty fascinating. And so I have other films in this series. Ryan Athletic Films, I think, is what it was called, is the company, and they did a bunch of these track events. So we have shot put, we have hurdles. There are other things as well that we have shown in the past, but we'll just keep showing them. These came from Northern Iowa University, a bunch of these. So thanks for tuning in today. Very much appreciate your eyeballs and your comments. It's wonderful outside, but already my eyes are getting a little itchy because there is a fine fluorescent green powder that is covering most of the surfaces, including my keyboard. And so pollen is not my friend, not at all. And it seems to get worse every year. So we're going to end a little early today, a couple of minutes, but that's okay. If you like what you saw, please consider hitting the thumbs up button or the like button or subscribing. That helps feed the beast. That will show us to more people, because that's ultimately what this is about, is trying to, you guys are wonderful, and I want to continue showing things to other people. And so there's great things that come out of that when we share this material. So do that. You can also financially support us by using the Super Thanks button, by going to ko-fi.com/avgeeks or patreon.com/avgeeks, or just watch more films on our channel. That's another thing that we've enabled advertising, and we get paid pennies for these ads, which we do not support in any way, shape, or form in most cases. But their little pennies help add up to pay off rent on storage units. So that's what's the physical aspect of this. Anyways, we will see you tomorrow. Everybody take care and have a great rest of your Thursday, and we'll see you again soon. Take care.